So what we want to talk about next is integrations. As Andy mentioned in his keynote, and I think you've heard some reference to this all along, integrations are a core competency of our organization, but also integrations are a way that customers expand their business value, something we're calling connected CoStar. And so customers that are taking advantage of integrations are maximizing the value that they can get from our application. So I'll be joined shortly by Jimmy Dykes. Jimmy's the head of our professional services organization, and I'll have to say that Jimmy shepherded us through a period of very, very rapid growth and grew an organization from 9 or 10 people up to past 70 people in a very, very short period of time, and has been instrumental in a lot of customer projects, and Jimmy would be following me with the presentation. Basically what we want to talk about here is some of the things I've already mentioned is how do you use this notion of connected CoStar to expand the business value of our application. We want to give you some examples of that. So probably a lot of you in your organizations, you've heard there's a lot of talk about digital transformation, and it's a lot of new applications, it's a lot of integrations, it's a lot of work process information or work process automation. And what it's doing is removing all the bottlenecks in your organization. There's a lot of money being spent. Probably you've heard from CFO and CIO about very large projects around digital transformation. And it turns out that what everybody's trying to do, of course, is just automate all the paths to your ERP and your accounting system, remove as many of those bottlenecks as possible. Matt also mentioned the notion of continuous accounting. Again, somewhat idealistic, but the notion is take those bottlenecks out, smooth things along, and integrations are strategic to that. When Kelly and Mark presented, they talked about the application maturity model, right? So these integrations are sort of the next phase of that maturity, again, expanding the business value of the application. And I think most of you know this, but when Jimmy talks, and he's going to give some anecdotal examples of where ROI comes from, the benefits of integrations are really, really profound. I guess from our side, they're not that expensive, right? To get them up and running and get them implemented and then to reliably manage them, we do that a lot. Andy already mentioned we support over 700 integrations today. So taking advantage of these is something that customers ought to do and receive that value. And so what do you get? So speed, right? It's kind of obvious. Cost savings. A lot fewer hours involved in processes. Some of the processes that Kelly and Mark talked about, get automated through integrations. Controls. As soon as you get more human intervention out of a process, you increase your controls. You get some electronic auditability at each end of that integration, so you get the reliability of it left here and it went there, right? So you get increased accounting control and other controls for the sake of supporting an audit. And then you get scalability. All of your leaders are looking for ways to scale the organization without scaling the cost, right? So if you have a lot of integrations that take advantage of that automation, then you're able to scale the business without adding people. So what I'd like to do at this time is turn it over to Jimmy and let him talk about how you achieve those benefits through integrations and to provide some integration examples.
Thanks, Dave.
Here, Jimmy.
As Dave mentioned, my name is Jimmy Dykes. I've been with CoStar almost 20 years. I'm rounding up. Similar to Andy and Dan, while Andy was losing a little bit of hair, going a little bit of gray, I doubled up and just lost all my hair, so I don't have to worry about the gray. Dan, on the other hand, I'm not sure what you've done for the last 18 years. You have a beautiful head of hair, making all of us jealous. I'm going to jump right in and talk about some of the benefits of integrations. The two types we'll talk about are quantitative and qualitative. The quantitative are the ones we associate with the most. They're the easy ones to put a finger on. We've all had to generate some type of cost-benefit analysis or ROI. So those are easy to sell up to the executive level. The qualitative ones are a little more conceptual and descriptive, and by themselves are hard to sell. They're a little more touchy-feely, but combined with some of the quantitative ones, you'll find that those demonstrate a lot of value with some of these integrations. Some of the quantitative benefits listed here represent some of the biggest benefits our customers derive from implementing integrations. Reduced cycle time is something that you will find with any integration if done right. Cycle time is simply the measurement of a process from beginning to end. And one of the most common examples we see here is around the accounts payables process. A lot of customers start their implementation with a process where they may begin the payables process on the 15th of the month, so they can get checks or data to the accounting system by the 25th, so checks can get out the door and to the landlords by the 1st. And so half the month is consumed by resources in multiple departments minding that process through, and it happens every month. And so by implementing an accounts payables integration along with some of the master data integrations for things like vendors and cost centers, you can cut days out of that process and hours out of the resource time that's being spent minding that process along the way. Next quantitative benefit is around training time. Everyone here, I'm sure, has been a part of onboarding a resource where you spend time focusing them, training them on the applications. That job is critical to know. And then you remember, oh yeah, and then for that you've got to come over in this system, and oh, by the way, yeah, you're going to have to log in over here to do that. By the time you've done that, or if you've written a playbook, you see you can quickly have 10, 12 systems that a job is dependent upon. So simply integrating, connecting systems eliminates the need to go into those other applications. It reduces training time, and it also reduces the start and stop time those resources are spending going through those processes. Integrations can also improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your resources. A great example of this is demonstrated through the general ledger reconciliation tool integrations we've talked about so far today. Rather than starting with the manual process of figuring out what work needs to be done, you're starting with the work that has to be done. And the way this integration does this is by not only automating the transfer of the account balances over to the reconciliation tool, but that tool is going to highlight the non-reconciling items. So a user is starting with the list of things to address, not with here's a bunch of data in CoStar, go move it over here, run through a manual process. So a lot of benefits coming from an integration into a reconciliation tool in that way. Audit's been a big focus of today. Shortening response times to audit is a big benefit, not only for you, but also for the audit team. Anywhere you can give access for self-service, as was mentioned earlier, or provide reportable answers back to audit as opposed to manual paper-based answers, it's going to speed up the time you spend in the audit process as well as, again, their process. And can only expect the time spent there at year end for the first time to be probably more than people are expecting. Organizations are all about doing more with less these days, and if you have a lot of manual, time-intensive processes, that's hard to achieve. Some of the qualitative benefits of integrations help with that. Touched on this a little bit just a moment ago, but building out integrations that remove manual, redundant tasks and allow people to start with strategic work is one great way and one qualitative benefit of integrations. People talk a lot about the single point of access, single source of truth. This is a big thing. We're all about having cross-departmental communications. However, we'd like for that to be more strategic. So rather than have to call or email or message someone for information, you need to do your job. It'd be a lot better if you had that information available to you and that you're interfacing with those departments only when there's strategic things to discuss. Accounting controls, another theme of today. Increasing data quality is the focus of accounting controls, so having more access and visibility into those systems with that data only promotes that objective. And then having digital audit trails for the transfer of data across systems is another benefit that you derive from having integrations in place. And last but not least is employee satisfaction. Good employees do not like doing repetitive manual tasks month after month, day after day. And so you're going to lose those employees over time, and then you're going to go back to training them, the new person, on all those systems again. So getting integrations now will help you on several fronts. I'm going to move now and talk about different types of integrations. This slide kind of covers the categories we've put together. We have business critical integrations, supporting integrations, and business intelligence integrations. As you might expect, the business critical integrations are supporting the exact process that you're using the platform for. So the list here represents the main business critical integrations we see our CoStar clients using. Along the right are some of the more common systems we integrate to. It's certainly not an all-inclusive list, but ones we see very commonly. An accounts payable integration, not as many people raised their hand earlier when the question was asked. I thought I would expected more, which means there's a lot of opportunity for those customers. This integration is providing an exchange of data for only approved payments in CoStar to transact over to the accounting system so you can pay your landlords and pay your suppliers for those lease obligations. Doing that in a timely fashion as well will help facilitate the reconciliation you have to do on the accounting general ledger side as well. For those of you that find yourself in a spot of being a lessor, either by design or by circumstance, you have receivables leases now, and now you have to act as a landlord. So CoStar also has accounts receivables integrations. They can act very much like a payables integration, but they'll help streamline that process and ensure you're collecting rents and minding those leases in the same way that you are your payables leases. A general ledger integration is fairly generic. We've had those around for years, but more specifically in the last couple of years, general ledger integrations have taken the form of loading your assets and liabilities onto the balance sheet and amortizing those over time from the accounting changes. So as you might imagine, that's been a heavy focus for our organization over the last 2 years. And with the rise in the general ledger integrations has come the rise in the general ledger reconciliation tools. So talked about that a moment ago. That's a big time saver and benefit for companies to have those tools in place to integrate in, so the balances are being sent to that tool at the close time, and again, that process can take over without a lot of manual intervention. At the same time, people were scurrying around looking for their equipment leases. They were finding large volumes of them in other third-party provider systems, namely equipment leases, and more specifically, a lot of fleet leases reside in third-party provider systems. So that data has to find its way into your accounting system of record, and you certainly don't want to dually maintain thousands of car leases that are highly fluid. So integrations of these systems allow for those leases and the relevant data to flow across to CoStar on a recurring basis. They enable all the integrations you see here to be available for that class of leases without having to maintain a separate set of data for those particular ones. And lastly, for our retail customers, sales data represents another mission-critical integration point. This is used for percentage rent obligations, accruals, and landlord sales reporting. So without that, they can't adhere to the obligations they have of their leases. Supporting integrations are the next category we're going to talk about. They either support directly one of the other integrations we just spoke about, or on a standalone basis are providing some other benefits, qualitative and quantitative benefits we discussed. Most important to this group of integrations, they carry some similar characteristics. They reduce redundant data entry across systems. They ensure accuracy of that data as it's moving into the different systems. And they also, I think most importantly, ensure the availability of the data at the time the business users need it. So it's there when they need it, and we'll get to some of those examples in a moment. Treasury rates or your currency exchange rates are things that the accounting users are uploading monthly in some cases, daily in other cases, and so that can be done directly into CoStar through the administration module. However, it can also be integrated and automated so that when you get to doing your financial reporting, you don't have to be concerned about whether someone has loaded the right rate yet. If they haven't, guess what? You get to do all that work over again. AP master data is more of an umbrella, if you will, around a few different integration points. Vendors, customer data, cost centers, all of the churn and change in that type of data varies quite a lot from customer to customer, but some of the same tenets apply here, which is if it's keyed in inaccurately, you're inevitably going to have an error in your AP integration or your general ledger integrations. That they provide downstream risk to those mission critical integrations if that's done manually. And also, again, being available in a timely manner. When you go to enter a payment for a brand new vendor and you've got to get a check out the door, you don't want to have to go back, get a form from accounting, fill it out, get the right code, key it into CoStar. So it allows you to work seamlessly and have that information available when you need it. Accounts payable, check history. I think it's funny to a degree we're still talking about checks. When are landlords going to accept Venmo or Zelle or some other form of payment? But I mentally said check and wire or EFT or ACH because at some point we're going to get out of running checks, I would imagine, for all these people. But the check history information will circle back to CoStar, actual check data or wire data showing what was paid, what it was covering, and for how much. And so an example of where you can remove another system you have to go into for those in lease administration who might get inquiries from landlords where they ask, where's my check? You can go in and see the check amount, the check date, what it was covering. You can help with questions about how to apply the funds. So again, just removes the need to access another system or even worse, having to call someone and ask them to tell you over the phone what it was for. You can do this on your own. Work orders is the last one here. Work order systems contain some other complementary data related to real estate. They carry with them work order maintenance information, so you can see a better, more comprehensive view of your spend at that location. They also carry other qualitative characteristics about the location, physical assets that may be at that location. So when the real estate team is looking at a renewal or a termination, having this information flow in together gives a better picture of that location and how it's performing for your organization. This picture here just gives you a little bit of a graphical view of all these integration points we've just discussed. The way when I look at this, obviously each box carries with it some of the things we've talked in terms of qualitative and quantitative benefits. So if done right, you obviously wouldn't go down a path of integrating a system that doesn't reduce cycle time or doesn't provide some valuable benefits. So when you see a slide like this used to be a scary proposition. The changes in technology and the ease of integrating solutions these days makes this not so scary anymore. But each one of these boxes, in my mind, represents time savings for your resources, and it is communicating business value brought back to your organization through shortened cycle time. So the more boxes you have, the more time and effort you're probably saving along the way. The last type of integration we're going to talk about are business intelligence integrations. These integrations are really about consolidating disparate data that tell a story. They're telling a story about how your organization is performing, or a story about how your real estate is performing. If you're a user of office or industrial property, they might be providing headcount, capacity data, or utilization information. For retailers, they might be providing store profitability information, or in general, they might be providing any other KPI that is telling you whether a location is a high or low performer for your organization. We've seen also an increase in the number of kind of subset of these business data, as I've classified them, physical property characteristics. These could just be, for a retailer, it might be store frontage or auxiliary square footage. For a warehouse, it might mean how many dock doors are there, what's the ceiling heights, all types of physical property characteristics where if you're evaluating the location, your needs may have changed over time and it may not suit you well, but if you're just staring at a lease record, you have no way of knowing that. So bringing this data together helps, again, build a better picture to make real estate decisions on for those locations. And an interesting one here, with the rise in equipment leases, as people don't know where they are, and sometimes from an accounting perspective, you don't care. You just want to value the lease and get it on the balance sheet, but sometimes there's a need to know where things are. So there's some integrations we've seen where people have a way of knowing where an asset is, so if they need to return something, they can go put their hands on it. Some other areas of integration, we've touched on this earlier today, is around market and real estate data really in general. CoStar research information is a wealth of data about the properties you currently occupy. Hopefully everyone is aware of that and leveraging that. CoStar spends a tremendous amount of money on the research side of commercial property, and that's all available to you today. So that is available, as well as a recent partnership with Buxton is allowing for some other retail-specific data about markets to be available through an integration. So these are, again, incredibly wealthy, rich areas of integration points that are available for people to take advantage of. The general theme of all the ones I've talked about in this slide so far is that they're all inbound into CoStar, and that's not always the case. Sometimes your organizations want to be the aggregator, so they just say, send us all of our data, we'll do all that on our side, and that's very common as well. In these cases, we refer to those as data extracts. We might be sending those to a data warehouse or a BI reporting tool, but there you're able to be the aggregator of that information, and we just give you everything on a recurring basis. This slide here is representative of a customer we implemented last year. They're a global financial services customer. Fairly representative of a lot of you, and more than likely in terms of the integrations. Certainly they check the box on each of the three that we just talked about. In this particular customer example, they have Oracle in place for their ERP, so they have a payables and a general ledger integration interfacing into Oracle. They have Blackline in place for the GL reconciliation. And then the lease data integration actually is a little bit unique here. They use one of their providers as Wheels, which is a common provider of fleet services. We built a single interface that they leverage with 3 different fleet providers. So over in that bucket, you can see the 3 different references there, but there's 3 different companies that are all sending information in on fleet leases from 3 different providers. And they also have a BI tool that we're sending data into as well, kind of rounding out that suite of products. Back on the supporting side, that also coming from Oracle, they have vendor data and allocations and cost center data. So hope, if nothing else, this slide gives everyone a framework. You can kind of see where you fall in terms of where the integration points are and where some of the more valuable incremental additions could be for your organization. Dave kind of touched on this. Integrating systems is part of a larger digital transformation strategy that we're seeing in the marketplace, particularly around accounting and financial applications. Our recommendation to you is develop an integrations roadmap. In doing this, it's important to engage your constituents. Kelly's slide, listed a whole lot of departments. Maybe not all of them are your constituents in this regard, but many of them are. And so understanding their priorities and where value comes to them only strengthens the case, and it builds a better ROI when more organizations or more parts of your organization are on board. It's also very critical to involve your IT group. Sometimes that sounds and feels painful, but we see a lot of changes in the landscape of IT systems within our client base. They're constantly moving to different versions, and some of those can invalidate integrations you've put in place, or certainly would steer you in a direction perhaps of holding or verifying that something's not going to cease to work after an upgrade occurs on their side. And also call us. You've heard a lot about customer success today, certainly a big theme within our organization. I'll give you Mark's cell phone number at the end of the session if you want to come here. But as I think Robin mentioned earlier, we have created a dedicated team within the consulting department that I manage that is specific to existing customers. The term Mark used of make it easy to work with us, that was really a guiding theme there, was that we didn't want requests sitting between sales and support where it's not anyone's number one priority. Support, it needs to support our customers. Sales is selling new products to customers, and we wanted to make sure we had a services organization that was dedicated and had a priority to delivering services to existing customers. So we're here to help.